You are listening to Renee O'Brien with Sharp Chip Consulting and YourCleaningBusiness.com. Welcome.
Hi, our tip today is about efficient scheduling. I actually took an example from a client of mine, a company that is fast growing, just at the moment, an individual owner with one team member, but growing quite rapidly, growing about, say, one employee every other month or so. So this thing is changing quickly, and we're trying to add some employees on. So what I want to do is I want to show you kind of how to set up a rotating schedule and how that can really help you make a very efficient scheduling system for your business so that you don't miss out on any dollars that you possibly could have. Let's see what we're going to do. What you see is a basic setup here, and I'm using an Excel spreadsheet that I've created. You could actually use a piece of paper that you have drawn, say this week 1, and you've got a big box for every day of the week, and then you've got a week 2 and a box for every day of the week, and we'll get more into that in a moment. Or you could use something like Google Calendar, and we'll also explain how you could do that later. So the tools that I'm using here are just so that you can visually see what we're talking about. Since you're lucky enough to own a service business where customers don't just sign up for one service, they sign up for reoccurring service. Things like once a week, once every other week, once a month, tri-weekly, different kinds of frequencies. So that's really great, and that's why we're setting up an efficient rotating schedule, right? So let's say, for example, somebody wanted to sign up for weekly. They wanted to sign up for weekly, and let's say they wanted to be on Thursdays. And that would be really simple. Let's say they're Thursdays at 9 o'clock. Well, that would be Thursday the 2nd of January at 9 o'clock, and then they would be Thursday the 9th at 9 o'clock, and Thursday the 16th, and Thursday the 23rd, and you get the drift. So that would work out great if everybody was weekly. Pretty much, you'd only have to sell out all the spots you have for one permanent week, and then you really wouldn't have to worry about it. Every week would be exactly the same. But of course, that's not really how it works out. The majority of clients actually sign up for bi-weekly. So that means every other week they sign up. Still, we can benefit from being able to set up and sell and reserve some rotating spots so that you don't constantly have to fill them with one-time services. So if somebody signs up, for example, on Thursday the 2nd, then they will go again at the same time on the 16th, and then they'll go again on the same time on the 30th. So that is why you'll see when we start showing you again how to set up the rotating schedule, why we have a week 1 and a week 2. In this example, all the yellow ones are considered week 1, and all the white ones are considered week 2. You can see that every other week poses some interesting tricky spots. You would think that it would only be twice a month, but not necessarily true. For example, in January, it's showing up on the 2nd, 16th, and the 30th. So even though you're every other week, some months, in this case, in 2014, for Thursdays, January and July, there will actually be 3 services in the month. So it's important that we set up our rotation on week 1 and week 2. Okay, so what we want to have here to set up our rotating schedule is we want to have one sheet per team. So if you have teams of 1, then there's a sheet for 1 person. And if you have sheets of 2, then there's a sheet for 2 people, which is the team. You can see here we have it on our Excel spreadsheet, team 1, team 2, et cetera, and it goes down the line. So you just want to have one sheet per team. And on each of our sheets, let me explain what we have here. We've got week 1, where we can see each day of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And remember from our calendar what we're looking at for week 1. And then for week 2, we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Now, I want you to think about kind of like these are seats on a bus. Within the calendar, and again, it doesn't matter whether you're doing it on the Excel spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, but within the calendar, you have so many seats. Okay, in this particular example, this company does teams of 1, and this schedule happens to be the owner's schedule. So let's just go ahead and type up here owner, so we remember. And what we want to do is we want to put the availability, the hours that a person is available up top, because you want, obviously you can't sell seats in a bus unless you know whether the bus is actually going anywhere that day. And we actually just have recently tried to clear this owner's schedule. So we can see that they start at 8 a.m., finish at 8 a.m. to say that basically they have 0 availability. So, just so that nobody makes a mistake, it's always a great idea to kind of make it really obvious. So in this case, just for our examples purposes, we're going to go ahead and add a little shape here and remind us that she's not actually available on those days. Okay, so let's move over and we can see that the owner is now going to be working 3 days a week. And we can see that basically, since most of her clients, we can see right here, there's some pertinent information. The client name, or some abbreviation for the client name. This is actually a region. The company has scheduled out or organized out 10 different regions. So we'd ideally like to have them in the same location right next to the right regions all the time. And then also the number of hours that job is going to take for one person. And then if there's any particular notes, like, you know, they have to have I don't know, some sort of special equipment or something, you can go ahead and put that in there. So those are the things that are important when you're scheduling. You really need to know, like, who's doing what and how long. So ideally, actually, because this owner considers it's okay to work a full day, basically most days she could probably work 3 full jobs if that's what she chose to do. Or if this were any other team, whether it's a team of 1 or a team of 2, it doesn't really matter. This particular team, in this case it's a team of 1, is available to work an entire full day. So what we need to see is when you sign up a new client, let's say it's a biweekly client, well, like in this case, this is Mary Ellen. She is 3 hours. She wanted a Thursday, and she's the first client of the job. First client of the day. Now, if we look down on week 2, of course, it doesn't say Mary Ellen, right? Because she's biweekly. She's only on week 1. On week 2, we go to Kathy B's house, and we go to Sherry B's house, okay? That's where you're doing that. So it's nice and easy because all you need to do is look in your bus, you know, your day's little area, and see how many spots do we have available. And if there's an open spot for what you need, then you can go ahead and fill it in. Now, what would we do if a weekly client wanted to get started? Well, if a weekly client wanted to get started, we would have to see that there's availability in week 1 and availability in week 2. Otherwise, we're going to have a conflict. So in this particular case, I would sign up somebody on Thursdays because that seems to be the only spot that we would have available for new weekly client. And let's say it's a 2-hour client. And let's say they're in region 1. Now, if you only put it in one of the weeks, you're going to have a conflict all the time. So again, you know, from week to week, you may actually add a one-time cleaning or a construction cleaning or something like that in your open spots, but you always want to leave available your permanent rotation because you know darn well you'll have a problem next week if you don't kind of consider that. And actually, what we'd love to have happen is you actually have all full recurring jobs. Then you don't have to sell anything more. Then you don't have to scramble to try to find income. You know, it's best to have everything completely full if possible. Now, the way I've got it set up here, you can see by, you know, adding that basically she's almost completely full. She only has a half an hour left in the day for that particular team. So we wouldn't be able to add anything more. Now, if you were doing this on paper, the paper would show the day of Thursday. And then you would either use like little strips of paper, like we use little sticky notes at times with some people, to have 1 per client, because then you can use color-coded ones, you know, region number 1 is blue, region number 2 is green, you know, that sort of thing. Or you can just, you know, draw the little squares on the paper, and then as you add clients, you can fill it in. Now, people ask, why don't I just use management software? Why don't I just use something like Google Calendar or something like that? You sure can. You could set this up in Google Calendar, but just remember that your permanent rotating schedule is going to be different than your working schedule. So like permanent rotating schedule would be you're going to client A on Wednesday, then you're going to client B on Thursday. But client B calls you and says, hey, I don't want to go Thursday this week. I need to go on Friday instead. So you have a little open spot. In 2 weeks, you're not going to have an open spot because Thursdays is that person's regular day. So that's where you really do keep 2 different schedules. This is just keeping your permanent rotating schedule, which you can keep it in Excel, you can keep it on a piece of paper, you can keep it in Google Calendar, and then you have your working schedule, which most people keep in some sort of management software, so they can kind of keep track of what's going on day to day and dispatch things from available spots. Okay, so as we can see, we've got your team 1, which in this case is the owner, and then we go to team 2, and let's see here. Let's call this employee Sally. Okay, and Sally is not available on Wednesdays, and actually Sally also does commercial jobs, which we don't have set up on here for you to be able to see, but that means that there's work happening on Sunday as well, but we can't see that in this particular case. Okay, so let's make sure we remember that she is not available on Wednesdays. So now we can see that Sally is actually getting quite a full schedule. She has a commercial job that's every day of the week, or most of the days that she's working, and it's in the morning. It's in Region 10. It's 3 hours, and it has to start at 7 a.m. So it's the very first one. So we're going to see that we're going to be there on a daily basis. Then after that, she goes to various places. You know, she's got many of these bi-weekly jobs. I don't even think there's any weekly spots. Oh, yes, there is. This PCP one is weekly because we can see it both week 1 and week 2. So let's say a customer calls up and wants to sign up for bi-weekly service and you'd like to put it on this team member. We have some options. We could put it on Tuesday from week 2. We could put it on, well, we could put it on Friday. However, I also noticed that there's weekly spot available on Friday, so I probably wouldn't want to use this spot here, because if a weekly client calls up, I'm not going to have a weekly spot left. Probably my preference would be to put it in this Friday spot here, or give them this Tuesday spot that's available over here. Okay, that would be my preference. All right, so I think you probably got the idea about bi-weekly now and weekly. Okay, that's the easy stuff. All right, let's move on. Advancement now. Okay, now we're going to start talking about monthly and tri-weekly. You may have noticed in the schedule here that it says tri-weekly here and monthly here. It's going to be a very good idea for you to consider, instead of going monthly and telling a client, say you're going to be the first Thursday of the month, instead go every 4 weeks, because you can see, for example, what happens here in January. If you said the first Thursday of every month, well, that'd be fine. Okay, we'd have a client there, and then we'd have our another client there, and then we'd have another client, and guess what? What are we going to do in the last week, the last Thursday of the month? We have an open spot. By using a monthly every 4 week plan, what you can do is you can go ahead and fill in every week, just like a weekly client, the word monthly. Okay, we're reserving it and we're saying every week at the first client of the day is going to be a monthly client. And so your monthly bus, so to speak, is actually going to have 4 seats in it. One for the first week in that rotation, one for the second week, one for the third week, and one for the fourth week. Now these weeks actually don't correlate with the first Thursday of the month or the second Thursday of the month or whatever. They just correlate in a 4-week rotation. Okay, so down below, and so if you're writing on a piece of paper or you're using your Excel spreadsheet, however you want to actually define out, okay, I've reserved my monthly spots. Now, who goes in what week? Okay, so in this particular case, Dottie goes in the first week. And this, I guess we'll call these weeks, they should be called week A, B, C, and D, because they may not correlate with week 1 or week 2, right? This is actually going to be monthly. Week A, Dottie's going to be. Week B, Sue's going to be. Week C, Pam is going to be. And week D, Nancy is going to be. So I'm going to kind of, let's see if I can explain this. This is always a little tricky. Let's say we can see there on Friday. So that means that on week 1, the first week of the month, for example, let's just say it's next week. Okay, it doesn't matter. Let's say next week is week 1 bi-weekly, and it happens to also be monthly week A. Okay, so that means we're going to go to Betty's house, and we're going to go to, I should probably have this so I can see better. We're going to go to Dottie's house. Okay, and then in week 2. We're going to go to Sue's house and Claire's house, and then we're going to also go to Sue Q's house, okay? The third week in that rotation, we're actually back to bi-weekly 1, and we're going to go back to Betty's, but we're now going to be going to monthly week C, which means we'll be going to Pam's, okay? And then the next week, we're actually going to be going to Sue V's and Claire H's again, and we're also going to go to Nancy's. And then guess what happens in the next week? We go back to Dottie's, okay? So the key to this is not my bopping around here on the screen here, but the key to this is that when you add a monthly job, you always need to go on the same day. Until you have a full boat, until you have a full bus with your monthly schedule, all 4 spots filled in, don't waste yourself on reserving a permanent rotation for somebody that isn't going to be filled in the off weeks, right? So you have to find a weekly spot available, fill it in both weeks to say monthly, and then you're going to identify which of those weeks the rotation of the clients are going to be in. Now, the client may say to you, oh, am I the second Tuesday of the month? You need to be sure to be very clear and clarify with them, because they may think that's the way it's going to be, but that just is not an advantageous position for you. You're going to end up with blank weeks where you're not making any money. When you do this 4-week rotation, as opposed to on every, like the first Tuesday of the month or whatever, an actual monthly rotation like that would have 12 cleanings in a year. But a rotation that's every 4 weeks will actually have 13 cleanings in a year. So it's better for you because you don't end up with these blank spots. Okay, now you're probably second guessing, what's going to happen next. Tri-weekly is the same thing. If you choose to do tri-weekly, and again, you find a space where you're going to fill in the word tri-weekly in your weekly spots, okay, as those spots are no longer available to sell to weekly or bi-weekly clients. And then you're going to come down here and you're going to fill in which weeks of different rotation, but instead you don't have 4 weeks of rotation, you have 3. Okay, so this particular client of mine, this company has 1 tri-weekly spot available. If somebody wants tri-weekly, and in fact, she should seek out a tri-weekly spot to make this a full tri-weekly schedule. So we'll say Mrs. Smith, and hopefully she's around 3 hours. Now we kind of simplified these hours a little bit just so that it would be nice and easy, but if you can see that if you do that, then you have a full tri-weekly spot. Now, do we want tri-weekly clients? A lot of businesses don't, because it's kind of a pain. You have to find other clients who want to fill these schedules. But if you do make an agreement to do a tri-weekly, or you do make an agreement to do a monthly, the worst thing you can do is either not tell them what day they're going to go, so you drive them batty constantly saying, I'll fill you in when I have a spot available, and you drive yourself batty, or you give them, the first week of the month or something like that, and then you end up kind of leaving yourself without any income because you're trying to reserve it for this client who really isn't, on the top of your priority list. Okay, so good. I hope that really makes a lot of sense. There's a couple other things I wanted to share with you about that. Now, when you're looking for spaces for clients to go in, you're going to be looking for not only an available spot on the bus, but we also want to see the frequency that the client wants is probably the very first thing we need to look at. Remember when I mentioned over here that if you needed somebody who was weekly, you have to have a spot on one week and on the other week. So if you didn't have any spots, like let's say this was the only schedule you had available, this person is full. It's time for you to be hiring someone else. In fact, before you start to see things full and there's not very many spots available, you want to start hiring early so that you can add someone else onto the team, because if you don't have any availability, who wants to turn away a weekly client? In fact, that's what clients will do, is they'll say, well, I talked my weekly client into going bi-weekly because I just didn't have space in the schedule. What? Weekly clients are the choicest. We want that, right? So you want to make sure that you have your availability schedules. You can keep this up to date so you can see what's going on. So frequency is the first thing you're considering when you're trying to find a space for someone. Second is their day preference. Now, they may say, I have to have it on Fridays. You may not have a Friday available. Maybe you decide to hire team number 3, so that you can make a Friday space available. If you do have one available, you're going to try to start to gather where all your options are. The time of day. Now you can see when you lay out the permanent schedule like this, why it is so difficult for you to actually promise specific times to customers. You can promise windows of time, which I recommend, because clients do want to have a general idea, but if you give them a specific time, it's really difficult, especially if you've got, say, these tri-weekly spots. Doesn't always work out like this. Like every person in that rotation is 3 hours. Maybe one of them's an hour and a half. Maybe one of them's 4 hours, or something like that. And so that makes your day different every third week. So, which will affect the biweekly client quite frequently. So you want to take that into consideration, but the time of day, if you can, try to keep away from that. It allows you to be more efficient. When you are more efficient and you can sell more jobs, you don't have to charge as much, and the customer ends up in the end better off because you'll arrive when they expect you because you don't give them some window of opportunity you really can't meet, and then you save them money because you don't have to charge them while you're sitting around waiting to make sure you can make the time on time. The location, super important. I mean, it's so expensive for transportation these days. This company in particular, though, they only have 2 employees right now, right? Owner and another employee. You don't have a whole lot of options, okay? Because you can't hire another person just to work, a half a day a week because you want to be in one area. The person probably won't stay with you. So we have to take it as it comes. As this company grows, they'll have more and more options. But there were some choices that we made when we put this together. We can see that these 2 people are both in Region 3. And if we have an option, like on Team 2, every day they start in Region 10, which is actually not that close in. So if there's anybody who's in Region 10, we'd like to put them right after that. In this case, it's only been done once. But as you hire other teams, it is sometimes necessary to go, oh gosh, we're not driving all the way from Region 1 to Region 10 if we have another option. So when you bring on that next team, you may want to actually move this client to the next team member. Now, I don't actually even discuss anything with clients until you've worked it all out on paper. You've thought of all the scenarios. And then, of course, when you adjust their schedule, you're going to want to offer them something for it, maybe even a discount. You're going to want to give them some choice because clients don't want to be treated like cattle. But handle it with care. But in most cases, especially if they understand from the very beginning that you will do placement based on their preferences, but also based on, availability in the regions that you're in. And that's how you keep costs low. Staff preference, sometimes, staff preference may come into play. You may have clients who request, hey, my neighbor had, so-and-so, and can I have that person too? Sometimes you can make it work out. One thing I want you to watch out for is if that's happening all the time, and you find yourself always putting everything on 1 or 2 employees, and the rest of the employees aren't getting as much work, you got to take a peek at that because probably what that means is the ones that aren't getting as much work are probably not trained as well, and you don't have as much confidence in what they can do. So the quickest way is to make sure that everybody that pops out of your training after a couple of weeks of training is all ready to go, and you are promising things that you can deliver with a trained employee. And otherwise, maybe that employee doesn't fit, maybe the training program isn't good enough, something like that. But you can't solve the problem by overloading one particular employee. Okay, overtime and breaks. I want to take a peek at that. So especially in any kind of field service business, something that gets overlooked too frequently is breaks and lunch breaks. There are labor laws. You do have to provide breaks, and it's kind of tricky to figure out where you're going to provide those breaks. So make sure that you schedule in here. This calculation that we have in here already takes into consideration what kind of breaks people are going to take, and it calculates that into their hours. But you want to make sure you're going to be considering that. If you're doing this on a manual piece of paper or wherever it is, you can write down where their breaks are so that you make sure that you're adhering to all those rules. Now, overtime, you don't really want anyone going over overtime. It costs you a lot of money, and your competitors probably aren't incurring that expense. So you really want to avoid that. Now, in every state, it's different. Some states might say overtime is if you exceed 8 hours in one day. If that's the case, this particular day would be bad, 8.75 hours. But in most states, it's something like can't exceed 40 hours in 1 week or can't exceed 80 hours in a 2-week period of time. So check with your local labor laws and make sure that you're always making sure that you're on within the whatever the realms of you're allowed to do. Okay, and that's basically about it. So I hope that this helped getting you some very basic scheduling knowledge and how you can be really efficient with your schedule.
You have been listening to Renee O'Brien with Sharp Chip Consulting and YourCleaningBusiness.com. Thank you for listening. For more information about how you can improve your business, make more profits, have less stress, take more vacations, and possibly even become an absentee owner, check out our nearly 50 products for cleaning business owners at YourCleaningBusiness.com. Thanks again.